Welcome everybody to the halfway point of the 2023 Intelligent Money British GT Championship as we roll into the southeast and the second double-header event of the season. Tomorrow we'll see two 60-minute races take place around the Snetterton 300 circuit, always one of my real highlights of the season. Today though, it's all about qualifying. 4 individual sessions that will give us the grids for those 2 races tomorrow on a track at which it is notoriously difficult to overtake. Track position is vital, and that will not be lost on the teams who have spent all day today through the 2 practice sessions planning for this very moment. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box throughout the weekend, joined as ever by Joe Osborne. Joe, hard to believe, halfway through the season already, and I always think this is a really important weekend. Lots of points up for grabs. If you can nail Snetterton, it could really set you up for a championship run-in over the second half of the season.
It's a chance to cement your position as if you're at the front, and if you're towards the back of that championship order, potential to get on the front foot as we see the 2C's #1 Loggy getting pushed out. So it's all the AMs in this first session. You can see some cars already queuing the fast lane, JMH, McLaren and the Century BMW. So like we always say, they've got the track advantage in terms of having the position, but they're losing tyre temp. You can see Loggy's not even got his wheels on yet. As Cotton pulls away, those wheels will still be in the tyre oven at perfect temperature. So it's always a balance. And with 18 cars, although Snetterton's nearly 3 miles, it feels like a lot of space. It always groups up. So Simon Orange has got the best track position, but the worst tyre temperature. I think those guys have had such a torrid season, they probably just want to give Simon Orange some clear space. And you know what, Simon, you go do your thing, and we'll worry about that little bit of performance afterwards sort of thing. But yeah, it's going to be spicy. I think, like you said, qualifying so important, so hard to overtake cleanly here. We've seen overtakes done, and they can be done clean, but normally there's a bit of contact, which obviously possibly will DNF the car. You're not going to finish a race, but you also might get a penalty. So it is really difficult. So that added pressure of qualifying, although Ian Loggy looks pretty relaxed, doesn't he?
Well, you mentioned he didn't have any tyres on his car. He wasn't in the car yet at that stage, so a very leisurely start to his qualifying session. But Ian Loggy, second in the points, in fact, joint second in the points at the moment with the Century BMW of Darren Young and Dan Harper. It's his teammates, though, James Cottingham and Johnny Adam, who head a 2Cs 1-2 in the championship standings. 3 of those Mercedes AMGs in the top 5 at the moment within the GT3 Championship. Just mentioned the Century BMW then. It's Darren Young as the AM driver who is in it. It's sat waiting at the end of the pit lane patiently for the session to begin, and that means that his pro teammate Dan Harper is stood by and ready to chat to Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. Here with Dan, it's always an exciting time, the halfway point in the season, because you can get to see where you're at and see what you've got to do. And you guys, well, second apparently in the championship, third, but second on equal points. So far, so good for the season.
Yeah, it's been going really well, like you said. We're right in the fight, right in the championship fight, which at this point is the most important thing. And it's just a matter of scoring as much points as possible at this stage. We've got a good car underneath us. Every weekend it's the same sort of people up front. So it's everybody's taking points off each other, and it's just so close up at the front. So yeah, hopefully we'll be at the right side of it today.
And for yourself, this kind of meteoric rise that you've had over the last 6 months or so, I know you've been around for quite some time racing, but for us it's a meteoric rise anyway. You paid your dues over a number of years, but here you are. Did you expect to be quite where you are in the championship, given the new car for you anyway here in British GT?
Yeah, I mean, we always thought we would be strong. I always believed in myself that I'm as fast as anybody else, and I think we've proved that together as a team. Also Darren, he's not as experienced as a lot of these other AM drivers or bronze drivers in the field, but he again is proving himself as well. That he can compete with them. So it's really cool. I think we're sort of the underdogs, but we're right up there in the fight. So
we always love an underdog look, Dan. Good luck. The cars are heading out now, so back to Andy and to Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Bryn. Dan Harper, who made that sensational move to win the Silverstone 500 earlier in the season. That really has been the highlight of Century's GT3 campaign, their only appearance on the podium so far, and yet they still sit joint second in the championship. But the BMW does not, I think it's fair to say, Joe, look like the fastest car so far this weekend, if you believe the practice times.
Yeah, it's difficult to read into it. Some teams have their own strategy. There's also sandbagging involved in that strategy, so you don't want to show your hand too much. One, to show the competitors where you're at, but also we know the nature of balanced performance. You always need to play the game, as we see Borodin cross the white line there. Interesting qualifying. You can get a penalty and just lose your fastest lap. So hopefully Peter Daly up in race control misses that one. But yeah, the Snetterton nature of the circuit's so twisty. This infield that we're looking at as they run into Hamilton turn 5, it feels a bit like a go-karting track, Snetterton. There's as much track fitted into the smallest area possible, and that naturally leads to a lot of corners, funnily enough. And the BMW, although it's good at high speed and medium speed, the slow speed isn't its forte, and traction as well, I think it struggles. So we go on board now, actually leaving turn 4, I was talking about, with John Ferguson. You can see this track position. Richard Neary is the green Mercedes in front, and looks like Lucky Kara, I think, in the Race Lab McLaren in front. These guys are, sorry, the paddock car, isn't it, there in front. So they're just looking for their position. At the moment, the pros will be looking at this. Marcello will be saying, we need to find some space. So if you're not going to clear this paddock car and this back straight coming now, we need a gap. And you've got 8 minutes. You're going to do 4 flying laps. If you're going to be a second a lap faster than him, we need at least 5 seconds. You can see he's looking racy. Are we going to have a proper overtake under the bridge? He looks like he's backed out of it. So now he's only got 3 corners until he starts his first flying lap to find that space. And this is where, as a pro, it's so infuriating with you. I'm like, we've spoken about this. What's happened? And these guys are obviously amateurs. They're making their money from their businesses and coming into a world where they're at their peak stress, and he's actually lost a place now to Kevin Say. So you're looking, we've got 3 miles to share it out, but they're all bunched together, and this is going to compromise basically his first flying lap and maybe later. And now he's off the racing line. They're all bunching up. They're trying to be polite. I've never seen all the dust being kicked up. This couldn't have been a worse prep lap. That it literally couldn't. Even his run out the last corner is terrible. And
they've wasted 2.5 minutes of the session as well doing it. So he's now boxed in a little bit behind Kevin Say. Further back, the paddock car still going slowly, even on the exit of Murray. So that's an issue, I think, Joe.
Yeah, I'm really worried that's actually got something completely wrong, as in like the front brakes are seized on, because we saw him all bunching up round Coram, but he looked like he was coming to a stop there. So we're keeping him out for any yellow flags in sector 3. But yeah, Ferguson now needs to forget everything that's just happened in that opening 2.5 minutes, and we need to get on it. Luckily for him, I do think Kevin Say will be one of the quick guys. So although we're close to him, I actually think Kevin Say is probably a little quicker on paper. Luckily that paddock car has made it all the way back. No obvious signs of damage. Looking at that front left, came off really easily. I didn't even see them take a wheel nut off. I might have missed that. But having a good look around that front left corner anyway.
I didn't see it either. Whether we cut to it late, I'm not sure, but that perhaps would explain a little bit of what was going on. Anyway, the main thing is they're off the track. It means that there are no yellow flags at Murray's, and we can now set to qualifying. These AM drivers have a real responsibility this weekend, as they always do in qualifying, but because we have 2 races tomorrow, this session will set the grid for race 1. The pro session will set the grid for race 2, and that's because the AMs start race 1, the pros race 2. So they can't fall back on their quick pros to salvage some time in the second session. This will set that grid for race number 1. James Cottingham then, championship leader at the moment alongside Johnny Adam, and currently fastest man on track, faster than anybody else so far in sectors 1 and 2. A year ago, Joe, it was Mercedes on pole position for both races. It was Ram Racing on that occasion. 2C is currently leading the championship 1 and 2 this year, and they're looking good already in qualifying.
Yeah, really good. Cottingham was actually the second quickest AM in the practice sessions with a 47.4, so I think this is going to be slightly underneath it as he crosses the line. 47.5 in fact, so 3 purple sectors, but I think he's probably still got a little bit more, especially in that final sector, so they're going to keep pushing. We saw at Donington in the last race, the cars just kept getting quicker and quicker. I do think that was slightly sort of perverse in terms of how much grip Donington was offering with its new surface. So are we going to see a more typical peak, 2 or 3 laps, and then we stop? The paddock guy's done a mega job to get that car back out. He's got 5 minutes remaining, so with a long out lap that we've said, he's only going to get two flying laps, I think. So that is going to be work cut out for Smith there.
And the news from the pits is that there is no news. The team don't know what the problem was, so that's slightly concerning, but they send the car back on its way, and for the time being, it seems to be accelerating through the gears just fine. Blends into the track, and of course now has to watch for cars arriving at speed with fully warmed up tyres. issues, though, perhaps for another McLaren now. That's the number 42 Race Lab entry. And what have you spotted on the right rear,
On the rear right, yeah, it's either flat or suspension damage. Car sat down, looks like a puncture now the way that it's moving. Ian Campbell in the car there. It's actually racing against him you can see the smoke coming out. It was racing against him in the McLaren Artura Trophy where they suffered 2 punches in 2 races there. So Ian's going to wonder at what he's done wrong, but he's going to have to nurse that car back. The team should be telling him, this is your session done. We don't think we're going to get you a lap, but we can bring the car back, get James Kell, the pro in that car, his session, and at least we've got a good grid for race 2. Obviously, when we combine the qualifying, that would have been a really bad result. But at the moment, this is only really race 1. It's hurting as we see Mark Radcliffe come across the line. P3, that is a good effort by him with a purple sector 1. Mark has really upped his game this weekend. And in free practice times, he was the 3rd quickest AM, and we've seen him more sort of 6th or 7th. So he's obviously getting used to that. McLaren squirreling under brakes there as we cut to Simon Orange, who's currently P5. So those McLarens are grouping together, aren't they? Ratcliffe, Orange and Topham at the moment. Real spread of manufacturers across the top 9, really. Is really, really good to see.
1:47.0 is now the benchmark for James Cottingham, who's gone faster again, as Joe predicted he would on his latest lap. 7/10 now clear of Darren Leung in the BMW 2nd. Balfe 3rd as the 42 car continues to limp in. And there you can see quite clearly that punctured right rear tyre. And that car limping its way to the pit lane. We think of punctures often as something that happens towards the end of a tyre's life, but actually low pressures, outlap from the pits, they're really vulnerable to things like curb strikes, aren't they? And I wonder if that's perhaps what has happened to the 42 car, which does at least make its way to a place of safety. Right, 3¼ minutes to go. Personal best sector coming in here for Balfe in the Lamborghini, who is bearing down upon this final sector. Such a tricky sequence of corners here under the bridge, through the left-hander at Brundle. You can see the bumps, then flick it right into Nelson, and Balfe is pushing.
Yeah, looks really good. We saw him at Donington obviously get pole position in his session, and he just got quicker and quicker. When we interviewed him afterwards, you couldn't quite believe how good he was. But Sean is obviously the competitor who's done the most British GT races ever, so he knows the championship, and he's starting to get his Lamborghini, although it's really moving around at Coram there. He should open it up and just try and get a line. It looks like he's probably going to catch Orange, isn't he? At the moment, he's like 8/10 of a lap quicker than Orange, so he's maybe going to get one more clear lap, and he might not get his last one. Goes a little bit quicker, 3/10 now off Cosney. That's more like it. Cottingham hasn't improved in any of the sectors, but is only a 10.5 off his best, so anything is possible. You do see it in qualifying where you don't get any green sectors in the first 2, and then the last one comes together, and although they're not green, they're only a little bit behind. He does go 2/10 slower, so maybe he's got the peak out of those tyres. He'll keep pushing, and if he's not going to improve, I reckon he'll box this lap and get the car ready for Johnny Adam.
Sean Balfe was briefly on the front row, but was then immediately bettered again by Darren Leung and by Mark Radcliffe, so he's back down to 4th now. Kevin Say 5th. In the number 93 car, then Simon Orange. Andrew Howard only 7th, and make that now 8th place, because we've had an improvement there for the number 3 of Mike Price, who moves the Greystone GT Mercedes now on to the 3rd row of the grid. Mark Sansom gets his Lamborghini into 7th. Lots of chopping and changing going on, but all of it some way adrift of the fastest car in the session, which continues to be James Cottingham. Riding on board now, though, with John Ferguson, and the car not settled at all into Palmer's. Bit too much speed carried there, and that is likely now his final lap of the session gone.
Yeah, and we're so used to seeing the Mercedes look quite docile, aren't we? But that was lively in there. That 3rd car and shot, this McLaren we're looking at now, just done a purple sector 1. What's he got in sector 2? It's not a personal best. He's probably 3/10 down or so on his best. He needs to only find 1/10 of a second to get onto that front row next to Cottingham and jump ahead of Darren Leung. Looks good so far through here. Last corner. Want to hug this white line on the inside, a little bit wide. They can see the bumps a little bit bigger off the line now. Need to hold it to the right. You can see the racing line got so much rubber down. We've had a really hot couple of days here, Thursday and Friday, lots of track action. As he comes across the line, is he going to keep a short distance along the pit wall to try and see what he's got? We see Balfe taking that 2nd place. What's Radcliffe got 3rd place? It was enough to get Leung, but not good enough to get Sean Balfe as well. So it's starting to tighten up in that mid part, isn't it? 2nd all the way down to really Orange in 6th. Only 4/5 between it. It is tight.
And what's nice to see is 4 different makes of car represented in those top 4 at the moment. So Mercedes, Lamborghini, McLaren and BMW all towards the pointy end. This is Mark Sansom, who improved on his previous best in Sector 1, but not in Sector 2. He is potentially still on course for a small improvement here, though. Turns his way through Murray's. The car looks nice and settled. Bit of a snap of oversteer over the curb, and he now accelerates up through the gears. He is not quite going to get through, I don't think, before the checkered flag. No, he won't. He'll be the first car think, to receive that checkered flag and goes through in the end, improving to 7th. In fact, did creep through with time for one more lap, and so he will keep on pushing on if he wants to. Other improvements coming in, though, and Sean Balfe, Joe, is not done yet. Another personal best in Sector 1.
Yeah, less than a tenth of seconds. We see him hit one of the floppies onto the back straight. What's Orange going to do? Orange is on a good lap as well for himself, so he's not going to let him go through. Is that a big enough gap? Did he set this qualifying session up well enough? You see the heat coming out the back of the McLaren. I think he's compromised already. You can't attack the brakes when you're that close to another car, and now he's so close, he's going to be in all that dirty air. For Bomhole, it's not such an issue, but it will be through Coram, so we've seen him now lose a 10th in Sector 2. What's he got? It was a big jump, nearly half a second to find Cottingham, but I don't think he's going to do it. Just an interesting thing on the timing screens, Cottingham's not improving, but his two speed traps of this lap are purple, so fastest overall, and that's not a strength we naturally associate with that Mercedes, is its straight line performance, but he's doing 150 miles an hour down the back straight. At the moment, that's nearly a mile and a half hour quicker than anyone else, so I'd say the 2Cs guys have really got on top of that car and trimmed it out, taken a lot of the aero out of it, maybe forsaking a little bit of aerodynamic grip, but they want straight line speed, and you would say, based on nearly being half a second clear, they've done a pretty good job at giving James Cottingham a fast car for this first qualifying session.
Yeah, not a bad job at all from team or driver. Cottingham, interestingly, chose to finish that lap, despite the fact he was 9 tenths down on his previous best. That means he's going to have to do a whole in-lap now to get in and hand over to, in the second part of the session, to Johnny Adam, whereas we have 1 or 2 cars, Andrew Howard, for example, already in the pit lane in his Aston Martin, handing over to Ross Gunn. So Ross will be ready to go, pretty much, as soon as the second qualifying session gets underway. Checkered flag out, though, and it is going to be the championship leading car, then, that will start tomorrow's first race, provisionally at least, from the pole position, whilst, as Joe has quite rightly just pointed out, their nearest championship opposition will be starting right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, so surprised to see an Ian Loggy up to 11th. Ferguson just lost his fastest lap, so I think we saw him drop from P7 or 8 all the way down to 15th. That shows you how harsh the track limits are. One discretion on your fastest lap, you lose the whole lap. There's no warnings in qualifying. I mean, Donington, we saw Loggy struggling, didn't we? And Gunon, to where we're used to seeing them. I saw on social media they found a problem and they were happy with it, but Ian Loggy is not going to be happy with 11th. That is 1 digit too many in front of that. Some other people I'm surprised about. Alex West all the way down in 16th. Yeah. Expect him to be higher. Lucky Carroll was super fast at Donington in the top 3 of the AMs in the race for his pace, 14th. So there's a lot of guys, I think, out of position, which makes me excited for tomorrow. We always want a mixed qualifying session in that bag. Ferguson, I think, will be completely dejected all the way down in 15th after doing a lap good enough for 7th, but not good enough with the track limit police that we have here in British motorsport. Is quite unique, I think I will leave it at, for its track limit rules.
Good way of putting it. Well, James Cottingham didn't fall foul of track limits, so his car ends up on top, and by nearly half a second as well. That's a good margin to have, even over a lengthy 2.9 mile lap such as this one. But it will be Mercedes from Lamborghini, from McLaren, from BMW at the front, and then there was also a late improvement for the Enduro Motorsports McLaren, which normally in that session we'd have seen pedalled by Morgan Tilbrook, but a driver change for the rest of the season means that former GT4 champ Matt Topham now jumps in alongside Marcus Clutton, and they will start from 5th. Then Kevin Say was 6th fastest for Sky Tempesta Racing, Simon Orange 7th, Richard Neary 8th fastest in his Mercedes, which is now sporting the Evo kit for the first time. Mark Sansom 9th in his Barwell Lamborghini, at a track at which Barwell always traditionally have excelled. They do have one car on the front row, I suppose. Mike Price completes the top 10. Then Ian Loggy, Andrew Howard, with Chris Hart, Lucky Carroll, John Ferguson, Alexander West, Mark Smith, Ian Campbell and Andre Borodin completing the 19-car GT3 field. And a fascinating grid there. So far, really nice variety of car towards the front of the field. It's really this been those mid-engine cars, hasn't it? The McLarens, the Lamborghinis, the tight, twisty, technical nature of the circuit really favouring them. Are we going to see a shift? Well, perhaps it's the next 10 minutes or so that might tell us. Yeah, especially that latter car. The Lamborghini was so used to winning here, winning both races, which is almost unheard of with the compensation time, as we now call it. But yeah, I'd be surprised if we see a gap of nearly half a second from first to second as we put these pros in it. All of these boys on the top of their game. So many factory drivers out there, and they're all at the top of their game, like I said. So super excited for this session. Tyres being changed on the SRO Motorsports BMW, so there'll be a brief lull here. The next session has started, but of course it will take them a few minutes to get around and start setting lap time. So in the meantime, let's head down to Bryn Lucas in the pit lane, who has found our Race 1 pole sitter.
I certainly have. I wrestled the crash helmet off of him as well because he got out of the car and I've tried to get him straight away. It's what happens, James, when you start doing these great laps. We have to speak to you from the top there. What was the thinking on staying out at the end, though? You got the fastest lap and you were looking good for pole.
Just staying out at the end, just to get the fuel burn so that the car is as light as possible for Johnny. And just to clean up the tyres a bit because my lap before was a bit untidy, so I just want to get that pickup off.
So for yourself, it's a case of going back through the motions, just trying to get your head in gear ready for tomorrow, because you guys are looking pretty good this season.
Yes, although it's all in the air at the moment. Unfortunately, I had a bit of contact with a GT4 car in FP2, and as it stands, I've been given a behaviour warning point and a 5-grid penalty as a result because of the 2 points I got at Silverstone, which both really unfortunate. I don't mean to hit a GT4 car. The last thing I wanted was a load of damage to our car, which is going to be very expensive. There was a blue flag, and he was on a hot lap. He decided to turn in still, even though I was alongside. And it all comes back to this race with respect. I'm trying to, but I hope that we can start on the front row tomorrow in race 1, but we'll see what happens this evening because we've appealed it. Fingers crossed for that, but equally, if not, we've got a 10-second penalty tomorrow in race 1 anyway. So it's not the end of the world. It's just a shame that we keep having these dramas with the GT4 cars, which I think this year has been a common theme with conversation between us GT3 drivers, that there just seems to be a little bit of a lack of respect. And the last thing I want is a bit of contact. But anyway, I just wanted to get my head down in qualifying and do the best lap I could. And we've had a really strong set of theoretical laps, but never really strung it together today. So I did my best, and yeah, the lap was good. I think the track felt great, the car felt great. 2Cs have done an amazing job. And yeah, look, Johnny's been a great help to me this season. I think it's really shown, and just fingers crossed he can do the same in this session.
We should have to wait and see. James, thanks.
Cheers, thanks.
So James Cottingham then with lots on his plate, I think it's fair to say, this weekend, but hoping to be starting from the front row of the grid in tomorrow's first race. This qualifying session, though, will give us the grid for race number 2, both of them 60 minutes in length. Both will feature a driver change in the middle, but the second of those races will be started by the pros, and so they now are plugged into the cars, and this is where we could see the quickest lap times of the weekend. We're expecting another unofficial lap record to be broken, the practice time so far suggesting that that should be the case, and well, fastest car so far today has been this one in the hands of Jules Gounon. He set the fastest practice time of 1:44.970. Anything down in that sort of region should be good for pole position, and Jules has got some nice clean air. He's got a car that should be working around this place, and he's on a push lap immediately. Yeah,
let's see if it was a loggy related issue or a car related issue. We know Gounon is super fast every weekend. He seems to be out in one of these Mercedes somewhere in the world, and he's always at the sharp end. So comes through in sector 1, all looking pretty good so far. Not the fastest though, only half a tenth off the fastest, which at the moment is Rob Bell in the Optima McLaren, who is also purple in sector 2. I think anything in the mid 44s should be pole position. But look, there's only 5 minutes remaining. There's such short downtime between the AM and the pro session. I get what James Cottingham was saying about as Rob Bell crosses the line. Was it 45.7? Is that going to be enough? I feel it's got to be a 44 something. He did 44s earlier in the day, and it's cooled off now. Surely the extra rubber from all the support races is going to give us more grip. Gounon coming through sector 2, still not another purple, only half a tenth off the purple sector though, so it is going to be close. Hit the sausage curb on the inside there. It's not optimal that just as the car is in the air, you can't accelerate because there's no contact, funnily enough, between the tyre and the surface. So committed through corner. We can hear the side skirt just tapping out there. Such a hard brake zone here, holding it to the right as the car wants to be forced to the left, opens it up across the line. What's he got? Rob Bell still fastest at the moment on a 45.7. Gounon comes through across the line, 45.4, so he's clear by 2.5 tenths, but still don't feel it's going to be quite enough for pole position at the end of this session.
Fastest at the moment is Marvin Kirchhofer, who set the second fastest practice time so far today. He's gone purple in sectors 1 and 2 in the number 88 McLaren. Here he comes, right on cue, the Garage 59 car exiting the final turn, and this is likely to be the first of the real sort of contenders for pole position time. Across the line he will go, the lap time to beat a 45.49, and Marvin Kirchhofer does a 40 44.793, a new unofficial lap record around the Snetterton 300 circuit. That is a lot more like it, and again, not a huge surprise to see the McLaren really excelling here at Snetterton. 7/10 then up on Jules Gounon. Johnny Adam, third fastest right now. Marcus Clutton, fourth. Remember, Matt Topham put that car fifth on the grid for race one, and Clutton doing a similar job so far with Bell, O'Brien, Kell, Harper, Mitchell and McLeod completing the top 10. It's ever changing though as drivers continue to get themselves up to speed.
Yeah, just when Marcello's only on his out laps, he's literally about to come across the start-finish line. Now he's in a right gaggle of cars as well, third in a four-car chain. I think he might have just jumped past him, but coming across the line with 3 minutes 30, he's going to get this lap and one more, isn't he? So he's only going to get 2 laps in as we go to Dan Harper, all the way down in 10th position at the moment. Green sector 1, but not green sector 2. And you can see half a second loss. Runs a little wide there, be so close to the track limit sensor. These pressure pads that all the MSV circuits have, and they are mega. You hit them, you get a picture taken, but that last corner out of Bomball, there isn't one, so a picture doesn't get taken. So as a driver, your job is so hard to break the rules without getting caught. As we see Darren Loring looking on, car out the corner, hit the turbos, whistling along. Looks planted, doesn't it? Doesn't look slow, the BMW, just doesn't generate this grip at low speed. It seems to really struggle on the infield section. Does go all the way up to third though. That must have been a mega last sector. We know he's half a second down, so that last sector was 2/10 quicker than anyone around him at that point in time. So absolutely hooked up through that last one.
But now Ross Gunn goes second fastest. Raffaele Marcello's first effort was initially good enough for third. He's down to fifth now with these latest improvements, as here comes the Marcus Clutton McLaren, improving in sector 2 upon his previous best. And is he now going to move up from 7th place? Sam Neary goes 8th for Team ABBA Racing with Clutton across the line. Will actually stay in 7th in the end. Not quite an improvement that time, but most drivers are putting in personal best sectors left, right and centre. With 2 minutes to go, Clutton right to the edge of the curb there, out of riches. Hard on the brakes, rear of the car trying to overtake the front as he turns into the Wilson hairpin, but just manages to keep it on line. As he accelerates away, more people improving further back, including another of the McLarens, Joe.
Yeah, Mike O'Brien, green sector 1, purple sector 2. He's in a load of space. He's just coming around the last corner as we look at Gounon, currently third. He's just done his best middle sector, coming into this last sector now. What's he got? We're seeing still more purples. Gun purple in sector 1 this session. I think because they all went out late, it feels like we're at the end of the session, but they're still only on their 3rd or 4th flying lap, so the tyres are obviously hanging on. Gounon's so committed in there. The car's forward drifting too wide there though. He needs to get it back over without it trying to kick him into oversteer out of the last corner. We did see Michael O'Brien on that purple sector 2 improve all the way up to 4th place, so the fastest McLaren. The JMH guys will be super happy with that. Gounon crosses the line and he goes up to 2nd, still 4/10 behind Kirchhoffer though.
And only 4 thousandths clear of Ross Gunn, who has married up that purple first sector with a green personal best in the 2nd sector. Here is the Beach Dean Aston Martin getting a nice tow from the McLaren as well as he comes across the line. Is this going to be pole position for Aston Martin? Ross Gunn across the line. 3rd place becomes 2nd, 46 thousandths shy of pole position, despite a fastest 3rd sector of the session. That is as close as it gets. Ross Gunn threw everything at that. It wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, and we talk about gaps being close, trying to visualise. Get your phone out and get your stopwatch and try and stop on 46 thousandths of a second. It is so tight. Gunn doing a good job. He's backed out of this lap and he let Johnny Adam go without really impeding him, but he obviously feels that's everything he's got, which surprises me to back out that quickly, to do a purple sector 3 and then on the next lap give up. He obviously got held up by Ollie Webb in that Greystone McLaren more than it looked on TV round turn 1. As we see Mikey O'Brien still pushing hard, nearly 2/10 down overall on this lap at the moment. But what's he got? That car really bucking around. When you see it from the outside, it's so different in the car. That would probably feel quite controllable. That looked like it was way too stiff on the springs when it was trying to rip his spine out the top of his head. Comes across the line. Feels like it takes forever to break the line. What's he got? Finishes and takes the checker. Doesn't improve, but P6 and fastest McLaren. So I think those guys would generally be super happy to be all the way at the top there.
He was 5th, that became 6th because Marcello jumped up into 4th place and got through with just enough time for another lap if he wants it. Personal best for him that time around then, so gets the number 15 McLaren onto the 2nd row of the grid right now. Mercedes, excuse me, onto the 2nd row of the grid. It is a McLaren fastest though, and I don't see anyone really likely to improve, although Dan Harper actually 2 personal best sectors. 5th place sits the BMW right now, but the Century Motorsport driver crosses the line and the final sector, it goes away from him slightly. What what can Sam Neary now offer us? Sam Neary down in 13th, a lot further down the order than we are used to seeing. The very talented youngster. The Team ABBA Racing Mercedes AMG turns its way through Coram onto the brakes at Murray's, and I think he has now abandoned the lap. So Neary will hang right, yes, into the pit lane. Anyone else improving out there? Well, perhaps further down the order, but I suspect that Kirchhofer is now safe.
Yeah, it really does look like no one else is improving. Just trying to look again at the order. Who am I surprised by? Kirchhofer's going to be mega happy. We saw West all the way down in 15th place, but Kirchhofer half a tenth clear. Quite a big gap then to Gounon, isn't it? 2 tenths. We're not used to seeing gaps so big. And then another 2 tenths to Marcello. Then close to the next sort of bunch of cars. When you start looking down, especially from like Callum McLeod to Clutton, there isn't a gap bigger than a tenth of a second, all the way down to 16th. So that mid-pack's going to be interesting. Probably Ewan Hankey down in 16th, not going to be happy there. Fastest lap in the race last time out at Donington and finished second. Yeah, Neary looked so hard. They've just updated the car to this Evo. Probably only done a day or 2 of testing to get their heads around it, and it is a big difference. So yes, there's definitely a lot of interesting people further back, I think, tomorrow that we're going to see want to get forward. And with such a big grid, 19 cars, everyone as a minimum wants a top 10, then a top 6, then a podium. So there's so many bits of the grid that everyone wants. I think we're going to be in for some action tomorrow.
I suspect you may be right. Nice to see as well different cars at the front of the Race 2 grid than we saw Race 1. As you mentioned, a couple of cars that really are going to be struggling in Race 1 maybe for track position, getting towards the sharp end for Race 2. But it is going to be Garage 59 then who end up fastest in GT3 qualifying and will therefore have pole position for that second race tomorrow. 46 thousandths the margin between Marvin Kirchhofer and Ross Gunn. Mercedes from Aston Martin from another 2 Mercedes, sorry, McLaren from Aston Martin, 2 Mercedes in the top 4 there, confirmation of the order. Kirchhofer then fastest, Gunn second for Beach Team, then the 2 Mercedes, the 2C's example of Jules Gounon ahead of Rafa Marcello fourth, then Dan Harper, the Century BMW perhaps overperforming, you could say, top 5 not necessarily expected, but Dan Harper got a really good lap in to qualify 5th ahead of Michael O'Brien, then Johnny Adam 7th, Sandy Mitchell 8th for Barwell, 9th then Callum McLeod, and 10th for Marcus Clutton in the Enduro car. So that car sort of slipped back a little bit actually by the end. Then it was Will Tregurtha 11th, ahead of Bell, Sam Neary, Martin Plowman, James Kell, Ewan Hankey, Chris Roggett, James Wallace, and Ollie Webb in the Greystone GT car that will once again bring up the rear. Qualifying complete for the GT3s. We are only halfway through our qualifying action, and well, if GT3 was difficult to predict, Joe, GT4 is quite frankly impossible. These next 2 sessions are going to be extremely competitive to set the grid for the slower of the 2 classes, but certainly not the least competitive. We'll get to GT4s in a moment or 2, but for now, let's head back down to Bryn Lucas in the pit lane, who has found the fastest GT3 driver at Snetterton.
Well, correction actually, I found his teammate. So I've got Alex West here at the moment because Marvin's down at scrutineering right now. It must be reassuring as he brings the car in, and as Marvin walks in fact right now, we'll get a quick word. It must be reassuring, Marvin, we'll catch a word from you as well, to see what the car can do out there. Marvin, it's no surprise that you can pedal that quickly around Snetterton, but for yourself, how was that lap?
I'm a bit surprised, to be honest. I've not been here before. No, it was good. It was a good lap. It was clean. Finally, no traffic. I think that has been the excuse for everyone the last 2 days. But no, it's been fun out there. The car was amazing. And yeah, pretty happy with it.
Talking about the excuse then, let's come to you, Alex, there, because you didn't qualify as high up as you'd like in that session.
No, it's one of those things, sometimes you get unlucky with the traffic in front of you and you have to back off and then try to do a lap. But I mean, the car is clearly very, very good. The team has done a fantastic job, and Marvin is pretty rapid around here.
Certainly is. So looking ahead, I mean, let's jump very quickly to tomorrow. Let's get your first thoughts. I know it's let you sleep on it maybe, but what can you do from this position tomorrow in the second race?
Well, I mean, I've seen the weather forecast and we talked about it, so it seems a bit up and down, but I think pole position is a good place to start at, and then from there we got to see. We've seen in the past a lot of things going on in those races, especially with the GT4s. It's not easy to manage every time, so yeah, we'll see what we can do from there, but definitely, yeah, happy with it.
And maybe, just maybe, you never know, you might get some extra additional compensation time if you can get yourself onto the podium. Good luck to you both. Well done for today as well. Well done.
Thank you.
Absolutely great stuff there. Fantastic lap from Marvin Kirchhofer to put that McLaren on pole position for the second race. But now attention turns, as I said, to GT4, where we've had a fascinating season so far. 4 races, 3 different race winners, but the Race Lab McLaren of Ian Goff and Tom Wrigley, they've won twice this season. The other 2 races, they haven't scored in, so it's actually Jack Brown and Charles Clark for Optimum in their McLaren Artura who lead the championship, arriving here at Snetterton. Now, the story really for the last couple of seasons in GT4, Joe, has been that there is no favourite. There is no car that is the best. There is no team that is dominating. Expect that to continue this weekend?
Yeah, and I think that the car we saw in shot there, that Porsche, the Parker car, has been really strong so far this weekend. So I think that's probably my favourite to be at the sharp end in these GT4 qualifying sessions. But the McLaren has really come onto the scene, hasn't it, with a bang, and with the Jack Brown and Charles Clark combo with Optimum has been really, really strong. As we look at the Enduro one with Harry George behind the wheel at the moment, they've had a huge amount of problems with that car, and really only Donington got on top of it and were able to get the reliability out of it to let them get to the end of the race weekend. So hopefully their form continues, and his teammate Darren Burke has come in as well and has been really quick straight out of the box. See the Race Lab car following them as well. Looks good under braking, doesn't it? Doesn't dart around too much. It's exactly what you want from a car as a driver. You don't want the rear too loose and giving you a bit of a question before you even get to the corner and turn in. Big tyre stack on the inside of Hamilton there, runs a little bit wide. Again, there is a sensor there. We did see track limits, laps getting deleted in the GT3 session. So these guys would have all been hopefully looking at the timing screens and going, where's the hot spot? Where the guy's really on it in race control? I can't get away with it at turn 4, but maybe I can at turn 8. And all of those little advantages you need when the gaps are so small over a lap. We're seeing gaps of like 4 or 5 thousandths, and that makes a big, big difference come race day to be in front of that car that's potentially going to be behind in qualifying.
Indeed so. Harry George fastest in the middle sector at the moment of anybody. It is the number 36 car fastest in Sector 1, but it may well take the drivers a lap or so to really get down to the sort of pace that we saw in practice. The fastest GT4 lap time set by the Team Parker Porsche was a 55.1, a couple of tenths faster than our Racing's Aston Martin. Then there was a McLaren, then a Mercedes, then a Ginetta, BMW inside the top 6, as well as Ian Goff just dips a wheel there on the grass, turning into Murray's corner. So a decent lap this for him. I don't think it's going to be the fastest within the session. Harry George will register the first lap time, and as he comes across the line in the Enduro McLaren, it's 57.2. It is actually a 56.9 for Ian Goff, so fractionally quicker. Then the BMW in the background goes, well, was third. It's now Carl Cavers into third as the early lap times begin to come in. A slightly more orderly start to this session, I'd say, though, than from the GT3s. The GT4 drivers getting out of the pit lane, finding some clean air and just getting on with it.
Yeah, only 3 less cars in GT4 field over GT3, so it's not that, but the drivers have just done a better job of spreading them out. The interesting bit there is there's more silver-silver combination, so young pros are normally graded as silver, whereas obviously that first session we saw the bronzes. It's just harder for them to get that bit of space. They've got too many things going on to worry about little things like that. As we see the DTO car, this car had huge damage at the start of FP1. It was hit exactly where he is there at turn 2 in the door, did a huge amount of damage. The DTO guys were worried it actually done the chassis, the impact was so big, but they got it back out for free practice 2. As we see Zach Meeking, purple sector 1, so fastest out of everyone. Good sector 2. What's he got in this final sector? Stuart Middleton crosses the line in his Ginetta just to do a 55.7, so that's now the benchmark for Zach Meekin. That is close to the lap record, isn't it, we saw last year in GT4 by Jamie Day in the R Racing Aston. So we saw the GT3s being quicker, so I think pole position probably is going to be a 55.4, that sort of area. So I think this Porsche's got one of the best chances to do it. So let's see how it is as he comes across the line, cutting a bit of grass there, trying to do the shortest distance possible, breaks the line, 55.6, so just under a tenth quicker than Middleton. That's going to be close to being good enough for pole position, I think. Although
Middleton going quicker again now in the first sector on his next lap, so this could be a Porsche versus McLaren battle, versus Ginetta battle, I should say, for the pole. Then the McLarens are Brown and Miller. Michael Crease gets his Ginetta into the top 5. Here comes Stuart Middleton, though, fastest of anybody in sector 1. Makes his way now down the Bentley straight towards the braking zone, and Brundle and Nelson. That best first sector, though, has just been beaten now by Jack Brown. So the third placed McLaren now going quicker than anyone through that first part of the lap. Car bobbling around as it switches direction through Brundle and Nelson, rides the curbs really well there without hitting the bigger sausage curb on the inside of the corner, and now just needs to make his way through one of the longest corners in British Motorsport at Corham, and then out of Murray's to the line. Stuart Middleton then pushing on. Here he comes towards Murray's, drifts out wide, cuts back to the late apex, gets the car settled, turns it in. Oh, You're just about okay over the curb on the exit, I reckon, and accelerates to the line. Is this going to be good enough then to put him back to the top? Zach Meakin fastest by 15 thousandths of a second right now. The top three covered by less than a tenth. Middleton comes across the line and goes to a 55.0, 6 tenths up the road from everybody else, Joe.
Mega, and who's still quick, purple sector 3, so he's probably got a little bit more in the bag. He is on the edge of that car. Jack Brown, though, with 2 purple sectors. We go watching him through Coram, a long corner. That front tyre massively overloaded. He'll be screaming for help as he exits the last corner. We know the McLaren's got good drive, but that Ginetta just looks so nimble on its feet. There's such different cars, how they generate their lap time, but I think the lap time is going to be scarily close as he breaks the line. What's he got? There's a big delay on the timing screen. That wasn't a dramatic pause. It actually looks like the timing screen's had a little bit of a freeze because the time's still going down, but Brown hasn't technically crossed the line on my timing, but I would say he probably has because he's about 400 metres away from it. So let's go back to that one in a minute, but we know it's going to be close.
Well, I think he did a 55.1. That's what the timing screen says. It just hasn't moved him up into the position that he should be in.
We saw this, didn't we, when the track limit gets called early in the lap. They delete the lap before you even finish. So we don't see his sector 3, which feels a bit strange. But you're right, he's done a 55.1, so it was close, but that lap has been taken away as we now go on board of Ginetta. Michael Crease, the sister car to Middleton, who is currently on pole position. You can hear that V8 grumble, sounds mega. We're so used to V6s in Ginetta, but this V8 to give them a bit more power and a bit more torque that they're needed. Coming under the bridge, how late can he brake? Get near this one board on your right hand side. The car dives down, get it over the curb on the left, giving them a bit too much hassle, and that's why he drifted over to the right, which then makes the right too tight into the bomb hole. Is he flat? Little lift just to get the front in, release the lock. I think you can use a bit more track on the exit there. I'm not sure you're going to get done for track limits. Hug the white line all the way around. You see his front right wheel bobbing in the air. There's so much load on the car. Again, you've got to hold it over, chuck it in, release the lock, and off you go. Look quite clean out of that last corner. Just up to the line on the rev lights. You see them all meet up in the middle on that Ginetta dash. That's your cue to shift up. And where does that put him? Currently P6, and that gets him all the way up to second. Half a second off Middleton. Shows you what a great lap from Middleton, because it is so tight until that big jump from second to first position.
Yeah, Crease only improved by 1.5 or so on his previous best, but it gained him 4 spots on the grid. So the Ginettas really coming to the fore here at Snetterton, as we kind of expected, I guess. Here is Harry George, who in the early stages of the session was the pace setter. He slipped down to 7th place now in the Enduro McLaren as he works his way towards the bomb hole. That McLaren looking to improve. Another McLaren, though, already improving. And Jack Brown now onto the front row. He pips Michael Crease by 15 thousandths of a second. So you're right, Joe. If we ignore Stuart Middleton's phenomenal lap, it is incredibly tight for the next half dozen or so. Bodes well for tomorrow's races.
Yeah, I knew the Ginettas were being fast going around the paddock earlier, and I heard grumblings about the Ginetta guys having a bit of pace in hand. Like I said at the start of the qualifying, at the start of the programme, a lot of teams have a tactic. You don't need to go fast in practice. There's almost no need, sometimes just for vanity. If the driver's got a good feel of the car, then why show your competitors what you've got? You can see Stuart Middleton there debriefing to Freddie Tomlinson, son of Lawrence, the owner of Ginetta. What's he talking about? Drivers cannot possibly talk without their hands, can they? Looked like he was talking about a bit of throttle, just go. Maybe be a bit smoother steering. Good job, well done. Down to you now. They're going to get a double pole position. They all look very happy. Lovely guy, Stuart Middleton. Well deserved. And I think he'll have a bit of disbelief when he sees that timing screen. Well, disbelief that he's met Bryn Lucas and what a hero. But when he sees that timing screen, to be nearly half a second clear of a super competitive GT4 field, he'll be very happy. We're on board of the DTO McLaren here, just on its slowdown. You can hear it creaking. Sounds like a mattress that I used to have when I was in my younger days, but nothing to worry about. I think in the McLaren, it's just the ballast tray. It's the plastic rubbing against the carbon fibre chassis. You can see he's cooling it down. So it's a fine balance here. You want to cool the car down. You don't want the brakes to be smoking hot, but we haven't got long till the next session starts. So it's a fine line of a slow in lap, which the car wants, versus a fast in lap to give your teammate the most possible time in his session. So it is a really hard trade-off on that in lap.
We are about to get one last improvement, I think. Kabi Jundu is still pushing on, dropped down to 10th place recently, but 2 personal best sectors for the number 7 car. Once that car comes through, we will be pretty much done, I think, with our first part of GT4 qualifying. The checkered flag waving for him now. Kavi Jundu goes from 10th to nowhere, because I suspect that was another track limits infringement perhaps. So the session done, GT4 driver changes now taking place, and we get ready for the second part of qualifying, but so far looks like the Ginettas are pretty strong, aren't they? Well, Stuart Middleton, pole position by a country mile in British GT terms, really nearly half a second to the good. The 56 car will be starting on pole position in the hands of Stuart for tomorrow's first race, and as if his day couldn't get any better, he's about to catch up with Bryn Lucas.
Well, Stuart, you said to me a few moments ago that you came in, a little bit early because that's all you could get out of the car. You felt that was it, and it's half a second up.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that. Yeah, like I said before, I think it was just an absolutely, perfect lap, to be honest. I couldn't have really got anything more out of the car. But yeah, thank you to the team, Raceway Motorsport, have done an absolutely fantastic job, and obviously everyone at Ginetta. Yeah, we've really brought a great car into qualifying. So yeah, all the hard work's paid off in the practice, and obviously all the races up to this moment. So yeah, I've got to be happy with that, and yeah, just hopefully, we'll continue this pace and translate in a good result for the race.
It was a great unknown really for everybody at Silverstone, with the appeal hanging over everyone's heads to work out what was going to happen in GT4. That was obviously settled, not the way you would have wanted it to for your own team, but at least it's settled, and you come into Snetterton now knowing what's ahead of you, and so does everyone else as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure it's a relief for everybody, especially us. It's the last thing everybody wants, really, just these sort of things happening and all that side of things to do with racing. But we had to do our bit, and at the end of the day, everybody else was going to do the same in our position. So it's as unfortunate as the result was with Silverstone, and obviously all the appeal and stuff. We just got to keep our heads down and keep pushing, really. So. Yeah, we know what we're capable of. We've got a good car, so yeah, let's see.
Now you've handed the car over to Freddie, who's going to be setting off in just a few moments' time. When you got out of the car, though, you had a bit of time, more than most people actually, to talk him through maybe some things you discovered out on track. What were you telling him? What were the little tidbits you can give us?
So basically just saying, I mean, the conditions are a bit better now. I think the little splash of rain just helped cool the track down a little bit. And obviously there's a bit of cloud now as well. So yeah, just saying that the conditions seem to bring it back to us a little bit more. So yeah, it's just could carry a little bit more minimum speed generally everywhere. And just saying the car was mega. So yeah, just told him, have fun and no pressure really. Just do what he does best. And, yeah, we'll see what happens.
You've set the bar very high. Now he has to go and match it. Hold on.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bryn. Excellent lap that from Stuart Middleton, despite the fact the car was trying to undress itself as it bounced over the curbs, as we saw from the super slow-mo there. Bit of a body panel on the right front corner that was beginning to come loose. The 55 car will also be starting towards the pointy end. Michael Crease, the first of the Pro-Ams on the grid for tomorrow's first race. But interestingly, Carl Cavers, Pro-Am Championship leader alongside Lewis Plato, starting, I think, 6th in class and well down the overall running order. So advantage there to Ian Goff, who is only a point and a half behind. Here is then the provisional grid for the opening race for GT4 tomorrow. Stuart Middleton fastest for Raceway Motorsport. Ginetta heading a pair of McLarens then, Jack Brown and Aston Miller, with Jack Miller in 4th in the R Racing Aston Martin. Zach Meekins Porsche next ahead of Michael Crease, the first of those Pro-Am cars in the second Raceway Motorsport Ginetta. Harry George for Enduro Motorsport was 7th ahead of Will Moore. The Academy Mustang has gone well here in the past, but both of them a little off the pace in that qualifying session. 8th, the best that they could do. Ian Goff, 2nd in the overall championship, will start 9th for tomorrow's first race ahead of Calvin Jundu. Then Eric Evans in the second Mustang. Then Johnston, Townsend, Cavers 14th overall, with work to be done ahead of Ian Duggan and Ed McDermott. So again there, Joe, couple of cars a little out of position. Even though we would expect the Pro-Ams to struggle a bit in that session, even that individual order is a little bit topsy-turvy.
Yeah, and I think it's just the nature of Snetterton. It's such a long lap. One mistake is so possible when there's 12 corners, so to get the perfect lap becomes harder and harder. And because it's a long lap, you get less laps in qualifying. So again, it's just harder to get that perfect lap that you've been working towards. This qualifying 2 is going to be interesting. I think we've got a few favourites out there. I think one has got to be the 86 of Michael Simpson in the Toro Verde Ginetta. We saw the sister team of Raceway being on pole. We know Tomlinson's fast. I almost feel like it's a bit of a battle between those two. The McLarens weren't far off. We know Middleton was half a second clear, but Brown was only a 10th behind on a lap that he lost for track limit. So yes, it was illegal, but it wouldn't have been 3/10 faster because of that track limit infringement. So I still think the McLarens are in it as well. The Mustangs, yes, they go well in the race. They just don't seem to be able to get that one lap pace quite as their rivals do so well in these really short, intense qualifying sessions.
They are indeed, and it means that drivers keen to get up to speed, get going again in this second qualifying session for GT4. Our final part of Intelligent Money British GT Championship qualifying underway, and drivers about to begin their first set of flying laps. Riding on board now with the number 36 car then, which now has Josh Rowledge at the wheel, and he makes his way towards Williams, warming up the tyres for his McLaren. Josh, who came up through the Ginetta Junior ranks, racing now for DTO Motorsport, try and put that car towards the front. He will already start third on the grid for race 1. Can he go one row better? We'll find out momentarily. Other drivers flashing through on 2 laps. Chris Solkeld amongst the first to be getting fully up to speed. Definitely some clean air though here for the DTO car, so that excuse is well and truly gone. He's weaving around to try and get the heat into the tyres, and now, well, at what point does he start to accelerate and really begin pushing on? He wants to keep this tyre prep going right to the last second.
Yeah, I'm surprised with the amount of weaving though. All the teams use tyre ovens, so the tyres can be at whatever temperature you want. Definitely hotter than they operate on track. So, you know, if the DTO guys have got a slightly different strategy, they want to bring them in a little bit cooler and then go. So out this last corner, you see him open it up, get on the throttle hard. He was making quite a lot of brake bias adjustments, so his right hand going to the centre console just to change the brake bias. Looked like he was turning it to the left, which would be to the rear of the car. Maybe just a difference between him and his teammate Aston Miller. Into turn number 1, braking on that second bump down 1 gear, roll the speed in. You can see the car roll over. Such a softly sprung car, that McLaren. Really gives the driver a feeling of grip, but when it does go, it's sometimes quite snappy at that regard. V this hairpin off, so go in on the brakes, get the car rotated and hard on the throttle over to Palmer. It's a super soft brake here just to get the front end in. You can just see the rear coming around. Looks quite lively, this car, doesn't it? Touches the curb, gives it a bit more oversteer at the apex. Exit looked fine though. You can hear him revving it all the way up, hard on the brakes. Use the ABS. The lights flashing on the dash to show the ABS is active. Unwind the lock, careful of track limits there. Luckily the cameraman saved him to see if it was going to be illegal as we go to Darren Burke, who's on the end of his first flying lap. 2 green sectors, which isn't surprising when you've only done 1 lap, but what's it going to add to? We know pole position was a 55.0, so this session should be a little bit faster. All the cars have less fuel in. There's no fuel allowed to be added during the session, so Darren goes across the line, 55.5. I think that's going to probably be somewhere in 5th to 8th position by the end of this session. Mike Simpson coming through the end of Sector 2. How's it been? He had a purple Sector 1 and a green Sector 2. So this lap we know, like I said, that Ginetta's already done a 55.0. Yes, a rival team, but these Ginettas have been so quick. I think it doesn't matter which team's running it, the car seems to be on form.
This car we're not going to miss, are we? One of the most brightly coloured cars on the grid, and it makes its way through Coram in towards the end of the lap. Here then comes the number 18 car, that one about to set its first lap time. Dan Vaughan goes second fastest, it's Burke fastest then, only just though because Tom Rawlings goes second, only 66 thousandths adrift. What has Mike Simpson got for us though? Across the line he goes, and the Ginetta only 10th fastest, I believe. Yes, that has updated, so 11th fastest that now becomes, in fact. Not all that much improvement there. A slow final sector, wasn't it there? So whether he had a mistake that we missed or just backed off because he hit traffic, I'm not sure. But Simpson now with it all to do and less than half the session in which to do it.
Yeah, he lost 1.6 seconds to the ultimate fastest in Sector 3, which is a huge mistake. So I hope it's not a problem. Still seeing improvement, especially Charles Clark. He's on his first flyer. Green Sector 1, really close to being on the money there anyway. Purple Sector 2. Darren Burke is also improving that. We're looking at the moment, that lap he's on is about 4 tenths slower than Charles Clark's lap. So I think Charles Clark has a chance of getting into the 54s here as he's going to cross the line in the next few seconds. But yeah, really frantic, isn't it? With the GT4s, when you look at the sector times, how they generate their lap time, that Ginetta looks really strong in 1 and 3, but sometimes that middle sector is struggling a bit. Charles Clark goes across the line, 55.0, so pretty much matches Middleton's best, doesn't it, from qualifying 1.
and is a tenth quicker than anyone's been so far this weekend in GT4 as well. But there are faster sectors coming in. Darren Burke just went fastest of anyone in Sector 3 to stay second, but to move a fraction of a second further ahead of Seb Hopkins, who's just jumped into third place in the number 23 car. Rawlings fourth, Rollins fifth, ahead of Wheeler, Vaughan, Wrigley, Cowley and Salkel, all the way down in 10th position. Interestingly, best of the Pro-Ams, Rawlings only fourth. So this is the session in which you would expect those pros to be right at the pointy end. The Press Pro-Am car is still fourth, except it's now Lewis Plato in the number 22 BMW, who jumps onto the outside of that second row of the grid. Mike Simpson, meanwhile, what's he getting up to? Well, fastest of anybody in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2. The Ginetta will be coming to the line shortly. In fact, it's the next car due through, and our timing screens will tell us that Mike Simpson jumps up the order and goes to pole position by nearly 0.3 of a second. That was much more like it. The Ginetta, the car to have, it seems.
Yeah, really working well as we see the sister car to Mike Simpson, Joe Wheeler here, hustling the car through. Sectors are not the best, already 0.6 down after the first 2/3 of the lap. That's looking like it's probably going to put him somewhere in the top 6. Freddie Tomlinson just done his best to put himself 6th position in another Ginetta. These 4 Ginettas really hitting hard, aren't they? Small British manufacturer doing so well against these huge, massive conglomerate car organisations. What's Joe Wheeler got? I love the noise that V8. It's such a dirty sound, isn't it? It's always surprising. You see its little happy face as it comes towards you, and this dirty noise out the back of it as it goes past. Third place, great Sector 3 because it was purple. So he was 0.2 quicker than Mike Simpson in that Sector 3. So he is really spicing up. Charles Clark across the line goes fastest. That is so fast, 54.6. So we're really seeing these lap times drop, aren't we? Last year, 55.7 was quick enough. So we're 1.1 seconds under that lap time from last year.
That is seriously, seriously impressive. Now, has Mike Simpson got a response to that? Well, not in the first sector. In fact, he's backed off on the first sector of his next lap. Will just have time to get around after a cool-down lap to try again. We'll wait and see whether or not he chooses to do that, but Mike Simpson might have to settle for second place at best here. Up to third goes Hopkins, by the way, with personal bests across the 3 sectors. Joe Wheeler therefore down to 4th position, as Charles Clark, I would say, is still pushing on here. The first sector 2.5 tenths off his previous best Sector 1, and perhaps a little wide of the apex there for Agostini's as well, so we'll see whether he chooses to keep pushing, but those behind most certainly are. Josh Rowledge improving in Sector 1 on his lap. Lewis Plato going quickly in the Sectors 2. That lap time from Charles Clark is going to take some beating. Really is only a 10th down in Sector 1. It's actually looking if he's even going to break for Hamilton. Looks like there's so much confidence in the front end of that car. You can just pitch it in. He's got all the way down this back straight to see his sector time. We're only getting 3 sector points a lap. The drivers will have a live delta in the car, so they will know exactly how they're doing as he goes through Sector 2 now. A little bit off, but still probably worth finishing the lap just in case you lose your best lap to track limits. There's almost no point pitting now. You're not going to get another lap. These tyres might not even be used in the race. So I would say finish your lap, Charles. See what you've got. It's your last chance next time you're in the car as this second qualifying driver is you're halfway through race 1. It's quite a bizarre experience that the race is always starting. You just got to jump in and get straight on it. There's no chance to really warm yourself up. A little bit too much curb at that last corner. Got to be careful of these cars. You hit the curb that hard, you can break the suspension. I know the Optimum guys are already changing the rear suspension arms on that car, so it was obviously a bit of a worry for them. And it was a purple Sector 3 though, so obviously likes the curb. It wasn't improvement on the lap time, but it was only a 10.5 off his best. Yeah, absolutely. Saved quite a chunk of time there in the final sector, and that was a very spectacular effort, if nothing else. No one else really improving towards the sharp end. Mike Simpson's actually pitted the Ginetta second fastest. Tom Rawlings, the only driver putting in an improvement in the sectors, and that came in the opening sector of this lap, although actually Michael Broadhurst and Dan Vaughan make liars of me by going green in Sector 2 on their respective laps, but all 3 of those drivers are running 9th, 10th and 11th places respectively right now. Rawlings then through Coram Corner. Again, the McLaren Artura leaning there to the left, and then again pitches into the final turn at Murray's, inch perfect over the exit curb, and he will make his way towards the timing line. Are we going to see this machine move up from 9th on the grid? Needs to find just over 1/10 of a second, and it could gain a couple of places on the grid, find some of that, but stays ultimately in 9th position. Broadhurst and Vaughan also weren't able to improve their positions, but once more it is a very, very tight session. The top 9 cars covered by less than a second, and again we should be in for 2 very, very competitive races tomorrow. Oh, a late change there as Joe Wheeler is dropped down into 5th place because Josh Rowledge put in a personal best at the end of the session to go 4th. whilst Thomas Holland continues to hustle his Ginetta. Now the final turn, he is coming to the timing line now, 15th fastest right now, and that is where he will stay. So we've got Ginettas up and down the order in that one, but a McLaren on top. Not necessarily what I expected there. We know the McLarens are quick here, but those Ginettas really do seem well suited to the Snetterton 300 circuit. Charles Clark, though, proving they are beatable.
Definitely. I think Mike Simpson will look at sector times. We know Joey Wheeler went purple in the sister car by a couple of tenths, and those 2 tenths off Mike Simpson's time would put him on pole. So again, it's going to be an interesting race between it, especially how they generate the lap time so differently, those 2 cars.
Indeed so. So, Ginetta on pole for race 1 in GT4. It's McLaren on top for race 2, though, as Charles Clark sets the fastest lap time of the day to put Optimum Motorsport to the front of the grid. Then the Toro Verde GT Ginetta of Mike Simpson. Seb Hopkins makes it 3 different brands in the top 3, as Aston Martin's, the R-Racing Aston Martin will start 3rd, Josh Rowledge 4th, and then Joe Wheeler completing the top 5. Then it was Darren Burke, Freddie Tomlinson, another Ginetta, 3 of them inside the top 7 on the grid before you get to your first BMW. That's Lewis Plato in 8th place, Tom Rawlings 9th in the end, and Michael Broadhurst gets the lone Mercedes for One Motorsport into 10th. Dan Vaughan's Porsche was 11th ahead of Tom Wrigley, 12th Chris Solkeld 13th, Matt Cowley 14th, again the Academy cars really struggling in that one. Thomas Holland's Ginetta 15th fastest, and Matt Nicol-Jones will line up at the back of the field. Well, a fantastic lap that from Charles Clark. Let's find out, shall we, what his teammate made of that. Bryn, over to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a very, very good day for both the Optimum Motorsport drivers. Jack, second for you behind the Ginetta, and your teammate there managing to go one better.
Yeah, no, Charles did a really good job. P1, we didn't think we had quite a pace to, qualify the Ginetta, but turns out Charles did. I didn't quite have the extra little bit that needed. Brilliant quality for both of us. So.
For both of you this season, I mean, if we look at the championship table, we're halfway point, or we will be at the halfway point come tomorrow here in British GT. You're top of the tree at the moment. You've got a decent points gap between yourselves and second place. So all you need to do now is just keep banging in those points consistently. That's all you have to do. Simple, right?
Yeah, no, it's simple. Yeah, no, it's not quite that simple. I think the races here often get a bit feisty. So, we just got to keep our heads down, be consistent and not make any mistakes and just try and stay out of trouble. That's our main goal coming into Snetterton.
Around here, you're about 10 seconds or so a lap slower than the GT3 guys, which means they're going to be catching you very quickly and consistently as well. When we talk about consistency out there, it's kind of not getting in a race with the GT3 guys and knowing exactly where they are at all times. How's that work for both of you as a team?
Well, I mean, we've got Ian, who's our engineer. He's on the mic, helping us out. For, it's quite difficult, really, to manage the traffic. You just have to make it so the GT3s get past you, and you've got to help them to help you to not lose as much time as you can. You're going to lose time. It's just about how much time.
Yeah, well, best of luck tomorrow, Jack. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
So, excellent effort there from the team as we reflect on 4 hugely competitive qualifying sessions here at Snetterton. It all began with the GT3 AM drivers making their way out onto the circuit to set the grid for the opening race of the weekend here, the 2 60-minute races at Snetterton. And, well, the first GT3 session saw, in the end, Mercedes get to the top because it was the number 4 car of James Cottingham who set the fastest lap time, nearly half a second quicker than anybody else. Barwell Motorsport second fastest, but it will be Mercedes from the front of the grid in race number 1. Then the second GT3 qualifying session saw the Century Motorsport car one of the first out on track, and Dan Harper would eventually put that car 5th fastest. There was a real challenge though from Ross Gunn in the Beach Dean Aston Martin. He was flying out there, setting purple sectors, and just missed out on pole position in the end by 46 thousandths of a second to the Garage 59 McLaren. Marvin Kirchhofer will start the 720S GT3 from pole for race number 2. Then attention turned to the GT4 element of the grid, and again, the first of their 2 sessions, mighty competitive, but a bit like the first GT3 session, one car was a real standout performer. Optimum Motorsport did their best to get the pole position, but ultimately it was Stuart Middleton for Raceway Motorsport who gave Ginetta pole and even had time for a post-session debrief with Freddie Tomlinson before he jumped into the car for his session. Second and final GT4 part of qualifying saw the Aston Martin of Seb Hopkins qualify 3rd. Mike Simpson's Ginetta will line up 2nd, but it's Charles Clark who got the number 90 McLaren for Optimum Motorsport, which will start on row 1 for race 1, onto pole for the 2nd race of the day.